Safety and Public Works Committee, myself, Jan Lampert, Wayne Erickson, Paul Sandy, and a couple of guests are online. We've got 6 agenda items. Look, you got it up, Paul. Is there anything,
Sean?
Okay, thank you, Sean. Is there anything, Paul, that we need to add to the agenda besides the 6 items?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Jan or Wayne, anything you wish to add?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, then we will go with the 6 that's here. The first agenda item is the event application for the annual Corpus Christi procession to take place on June 14th, 2020 from 12 p.m. to 1:30. This is the application by St. Francis and St. Andrew's Church, something they've done for a number of years. Mr. Engineer, anything you need to add to what's in the packet?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So, yeah, like you said, this event is a walk that takes place between St. Francis and St. Andrew's Church. They utilize Juniper Street, 8th Street, and Willow Street for the we usually help them out at busy street crossings like Highway 210 with police forces. Basically, we've talked this over with the chief and things, and we do recommend approval of the application. So as long the event is in compliance with the governor's orders, we're going to strike that last statement that says in groups of 10 people, just because the governor's orders may change between now and the event. And so we're just going to leave it. Hopefully the committee wants to leave it at just approval of the application. So as long as it's in compliance with whatever the governor has for orders.
Excellent. Any questions, Jan or Wayne?
No, I do agree. That would be a nice way to do the recommendation.
Right on. All right. Is there a motion to accept staff's recommendation and approve the application so long as the event is in compliance with the governor's orders and proper social distance guidelines are adhered to?
So moved, Lambert.
Wayne, you second that?
Wayne's on mute.
Yes.
Thank you, Wayne. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Paul, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Bevins?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
That motion passes. Item number 2 is the event application produce pop-up. And that is for a produce pop-up event to be held on May 26th, which is just next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Mississippi Parkway. That's the one by Central Lakes College on the south or river side of the college. Mr. Engineer, anything you need to add to what's in our packet?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Like you said, the event is on Mississippi Parkway. Basically, they deliver food to people's cars, so there is no need to put any approval conditions on this one, but the removal of signage after the event is over. So that's all we have recommended, is that we approve this event with that caveat that they remove all the signage after the event.
Jan or Wayne, any questions?
Mr. Chair, and I don't, this is Lambert. I don't know if we've done this in the past, but I would also like to see any garbage or anything. It should be, the site should be cleaned of any trash or garbage. Do we ever do that?
I think we can add that to our recommendation.
I would like to do that.
You think being it's the college that they would agree with that anyway, so.
Okay.
Wayne, any questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Perfect. Motion by Erickson,
Second, Lambert.
second by Lambert. to approve the attached event application under the conditions that any signage and/or garbage be removed immediately after the event. Any questions?
None.
Mr. Engineer, would you call the roll?
Bevins,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
That carries.
That motion carries. Item number 3 is improvement 20-02, the 2020 crack seal project quotes. It appears we have 3 estimates with a recommendation to enter into a contract with Lot Pros and the contract cost of $15,758.72. Not counting the material. Mr. Engineer, anything you want to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. As you said, we had 3 quotes come in from Camco, who we've worked with in the past, Lot Pros and Farner Asphalt Sealers. Their cost $22,359.92, $15,758.72, and $42,836.48 respectively. We do purchase our own crack filling material every year, and that was in the amount of $5,625. And so we're recommending that we get into a contract with Lot Pros for $15,758.72 and purchase of the crack filling material for the contractor for a total contract cost of $21,383.72.
Any questions of the engineer?
Mr. Chair, Lambert,
Dan?
Paul, what are you finding on prices? Are they pretty much stable as last year on some of the stuff now, or?
Yeah, we've been lucky on this project in the past because generally the county's crack sealing contractor gets our work because they have such a low mobilization cost since they're already working for the county. So we usually wait for the county to bid their work, and then we come in right after because we just take advantage of those good prices. And so Lot Pros is doing the county work again this year, so they bid very well on our projects. And generally, the state contract price for the crack filling material is the best deal you can find because the state goes to all the bidding and everything with all of the suppliers for us. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd be willing to make a motion unless anybody has any questions.
Yep, we're ready.
I would make the motion to approve the contract with Lot Pros in the contract cost of $15,758.72.
Perfect. Wayne, you second that?
I will second it, yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Mr. Engineer, please call the roll.
Bevins,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you, Mr. Engineer. Next up is the testing services on improvement 19-10 Northeast Brainerd resurfacing project. The recommendation from staff is to approve the proposal from ITT in the total amount of $4,494 to be paid from Construction Fund 401. Mr. Engineer, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So in the past, we've asked Braun Intertech to typically bid our projects for testing services. We did get reached out from ITT to begin bidding on our work. This is the first time that we've worked with them in my experience here. If we do get this approved by the committee and council tonight, you can see that their prices between Braun and ITT are significantly different in both of these upcoming projects. So both 1910, which you're looking at right now, and the next project that we have an item on, which is our state aid work. So from a staff perspective, we want to make sure that Braun is keeping their pricing competitive and that while still, getting the same service. So Braun has been very, very good to us in the past about coming out when they're needed, providing us the testing that is required, and doing all the final paperwork on our projects for testing services. Like I said, we haven't used ITT before, but because their prices are so substantially different, in the next item that we're actually recommending that Braun do our project, and we're giving ITT the opportunity to do this work, which and if we enjoy using them, I guess, and they provide the same service that Braun does. And so, from our perspective, the price difference is a little bit testing we would need to perform. And I also think that ITT is trying to get their foot in the door, so they're more or less, one project and see if their work is, up to par. So we're recommending. And then state work, which is reimbursable, we're requesting that we use Braun for the increased price.
Any questions of the engineer? Hearing none, is there a motion accepting staff's recommendation on this testing service?
No, I'll be glad to make a motion that we accept the, this, project, the way it's been laid out.
Motion by Erickson, is there a second?
Lambert, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Mr. Engineer, please call the roll.
Evans,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
That motion carries. We'll move on to item number 5, testing services with improvements 19-09, 13-21, 19-16, 19-20, and 19-21, which is the Northeast Brainerd Reconstruction Project. We have a recommendation from staff approving the testing services proposal from Braun Intertech in the total amount of $44,480, which is part of the final project cost of the project and reimbursable through the city state aid account in this instance. Mr. Engineer, anything you wish to add? Like maybe just hit the one more time. How come we're taking the one that's 4 times as expensive?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as with the previous item, we got proposals from Independent Testing Technologies and Braun Intertech. You can see the prices respectively, the $44,480 and the $12,270. Like I said before, the cost differences in the proposals we feel are kind of twofold. Braun is typically pretty conservative on how many tests that need to be performed on a project. And we usually, even though they're conservative, we usually don't use as, the whole $44,000. We usually end up coming in under those amounts. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is, I think that, like I said, ITT is trying to get their foot in the door up here. They do a lot of work down in Sartell and Sauk Rapids and things. From a staff perspective, we would like to get a comfort level with them before we start, if they do continue to bid more than Braun, we would want to, make sure we're getting the product that, we were used to from Braun Intertech. And so with the more challenging that this project is, and the more paperwork intensive at the end of a project that the state aid projects tend to be, staff would recommend that we use Braun in this instance as we have in the past, and let ITT take the work on the resurfacing project, so that we ensure that we're getting the product that we need at the end of projects from ITT as we do with Braun Intertech.
Thank you. Any questions, Jan or Wayne?
Yes, is there a cost to the citizens for this that live on those streets?
These projects will be assessed for, but the testing services are a very, very small portion of that, Wayne. So when we calculate assessments, it's generally the project costs, and we generally, there's not a lot of the testing services we put into that, just because most of the testing that takes place, we assess for like the resurfacing of the street to a standard width and a standard, section. And so when it comes to testing, it plays a very, very small role in the amount we assess for. And so, really, the difference in the testing services would typically be covered 100% by state aid. There might be a small portion of the testing services that are assessed.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the engineer?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion if that's okay.
We're ready, Jen.
I'll make a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the testing services of Braun Intertech for the total amount of $44,480.
And I'll second that, Erickson.
Perfect. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I mean, the only one I have is obviously with the price difference. If ITT shows their mettle on the first project that we allowed, we should look very closely at what's literally a 400% difference. So, or nearly a 400% difference. So if they do a good job, I certainly would like to see us give them more, even though it's a small part of the project. We are servants to the public's money. So, all right.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
It's not an interruption.
how do you do an evaluation now? Is it more how they work, how everything works together, or how are you more hands-on perhaps for somebody that we haven't used before?
Yeah, I have a feeling that, I did some checking around too on what kind of services that ITT does provide from people that have used them. The city of Baxter used them about 16 or 17 years ago. And, it was a little bit less on the back end from what I understand, so when it comes to the final paperwork end, there's a lot more stuff that city staff's going to have to do. And so that is one thing. From an evaluation of the proposal standpoint, we look at the number of tests each contract. These proposals are really kind of difficult to bid on because the testing that occurs really depends on how fast the contractor is moving. If they're paving the street in one day, you're going to have a lot less testing than if you spend 3 days paving. Or, for example, if the curb and gutter goes in 1 week, you're going to have a lot less tests than if it were to take 4 weeks. And so it really depends on, number one, who you get for contractors, how busy they are, and how many tests that the testing service people need to perform. And so these proposals are kind of like comparing apples to oranges, because it's really the testing firm's best guess on how many tests we're going to need. And we found that Braun, like I said, is a little more conservative in that approach, in that they typically plan for more than what are needed to kind of give us a worst case scenario. And it looks like ITT is much less conservative in that respect, where they are planning for much less tests, which kind of skews their proposal, towards the lower end. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And so we might end up paying more than the $12,270 if we were to take ITT, just because the testing might be more than what they're anticipating. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Paul.
All right, I have one more question then that you just piqued my interest, Jan. Do they bid these, Paul, as so many tests, period? Or do they bid the job with however many tests are needed?
They bid the job on previous experience on projects of a similar nature. So each test has, so we have asphalt tests, concrete tests, all kinds of tests we have to perform, especially on state aid work. The state requires us to do materials testing on most all materials that are used on the project. And so these testing firms used previous experience to try to generate an estimate of how many tests are performed. So obviously, Braun, like I said, uses a little more conservative approach, and on their previous work, they might have found that they need 5 concrete tests, and so in their proposal they put 7. We pay them for the actual amount of tests performed. So if they plan for 8 tests at a $2,000 cost, and they only do 5, they would only charge us for the 5.
What if we use 20?
Then obviously we would have to pay that additional, but it's really dependent on the contractor's operations, and that's.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, but if you wanted to win a bid, and we're really getting off target here, but you could just bid the number of tests low. Like what, and then you'd win every bid. And then you'd say, well, we underestimated the amount of testing needed.
Yeah, but if they do that a couple of times, I would feel like the city would, take that into consideration and say that, hey, you've underbid these jobs 2 or 3 times in a row. And you would look at that and kind of, disqualify them or say that, hey, you need to start planning for more testing because obviously we've had more expense than what you've been bidding on.
I hear you. Okay, we have a motion by Erickson, I believe. No, Lambert. Oh, you have another question, Jan?
We've already voted, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, we did. We have. I think we have.
Well, yeah, not on this one.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Any further questions? Hearing none, Mr. Engineer Sandy, would you call the roll?
Bevins,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Motion carries. We're on our last agenda item, which is the I&I report on the proposal from SEH for services outlined in the document, with half the cost to be paid by BPU and the city's share to come from Sanitary Sewer Fund 237. Our portion looks like $39,180. Am I reading that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. Engineer Sandy, anything you'd like to add to the recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city and BPU started this process about 3 months ago. We have a very old sewer system in Brainerd, and with that comes a lot of what we call I&I. That's infiltration and inflow, which is basically stormwater and groundwater entering into the gray water or sanitary sewer system. So with that, back in 2003, the city embarked on kind of a citywide I&I study, which basically is monitoring and smoke testing of the sewer system, which we put flow meters in at certain locations. And when a rain event occurs, we see what the increase in flow is in the system. And that's a good indicator of how much water or clean water is entering the system that shouldn't be. So from that report, the consultant formulated multiple recommendations, both for projects and for further testing of the system. From that project, we developed quite a few projects from that original report. They included the downtown reconstruction, where they did quite extensive smoke testing to see where there was cross connects with like roof drains and sump pumps downtown. That was all resolved in the downtown project. Another recommendation and project that came out of that report was the lining of the sanitary sewer interceptor from the Potlatch property to the Evergreen lift station, where there was extensive from the river. Also had the upgrade at the lift station as part of the airport utility extension, and that was over at Lum Park to upgrade it to a bigger lift. That wasn't necessarily due to I&I, that was due to a large water user in that area that tends to overwhelm that lift. And so we went through the report in detail and had SEH work with us on evaluating the city sewer system and kind of breaking it down into sanitary sewer pipe sheds and trying to further the scope of this original report and what we're calling a phase 2 I&I study. And that phase 2 worked very heavily with SEH over the past couple of months to formulate the scope of work that you can see in the packet. It basically contains some further investigation of the areas of high I&I from that 2003 report. They had a couple of larger areas in which further investigation should be completed. And they include the smoke testing of Basin 45, which is basically the southeast region of Brainerd. And we're getting a lot of feedback from someone. Does someone not on mute? Okay. That was the smoke testing of Basin 45, which is the southeast region of Brainerd, and the trunk sewer line that runs from southeast down through the Franklin football field to the Evergreen lift station. We also, the report kind of identified that we should be taking a look at the river trunk segment that runs through Rotary and Kiwanis Park. There's an assumption that that same thing from high river levels is occurring as it was down on the interceptor that runs from Potlatch to Evergreen. And so that would also be an area that that was scoped for as part of this study. And we also want to go back and take a look so that Evergreen, that lining that we did in the interceptor at between Potlatch and the Evergreen lift is about 20 years old now. And we want to make sure that the rehab that we did to that pipe is holding true. And so that is really the scope of this study, is to call it a phase 2 of the 2003 study. And from this work, mostly in the southeast portion of Brainerd, we would be able to identify the areas of the highest I&I by the smoke testing. And from there, we can put the money that we want to continue to spend on the sewer system into the spots that make the most sense. So with that, we would see less wear and tear, so BPU decided to get in on this because they're seeing a lot of clean water go through their lift stations, which is wear and tear on their pumps. It's treatment costs. You're treating clean water when it doesn't need to be. And so it's really a beneficial both for the city and BPU because it's a direct relation to what the user fees are for the system. If we're treating more than what we need to be, it's a direct reflection of how much I&I is coming into the system. So really, we feel that this scope of work is very important to being able to put our money in the best spots on the sewer system. We do have camera equipment that we use at the street department to scope pipes and to do things to find where there are very troublesome areas in our sewer system. That only goes so far because you can't necessarily tell where the I&I is coming from, whether it's coming from a cross connection of a foundation drain, if it's coming from a roof drain of a building, if it's coming from a crack or a joint in the pipe. There's multiple areas that these can come in, and the camera can only do so much. Smoke testing really is a good way to look at where our worst areas are and try to reduce the I&I in those regions that we've identified in the scope of this report. So With that, I can answer any questions, and I think SEH is on the line too to answer any questions that I might not be able to answer. So,
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
My apologies, I muted myself. Thank you. Yes, Jan.
So Paul, on these, how much is it related all to residential usage? Or just the natural things that Mother Nature puts out versus anything that is residential or business does?
so yeah, it's back, many years ago, our sewer system was more or less a combined system. So most of the sanitary sewer or most of the sewer dropped. And
I remember that, yeah.
yeah, back when the sanitary sewer system was put in, treating clean water wasn't as big of a deal. So you would see a lot of people connect in their sump pumps to the sewer system, which are just foundation drains. So that's what we consider kind of a residential. Roof drains like downtown. A lot of those back then were connected in the sanitary sewer system because it wasn't as big of a deal to be treating clean water. BPU operates under a permit through the MPCA for a certain amount of gallons of discharge that they can have a day. And by continually treating more and more stormwater, they're taking away from the actual gray water that they could be treating. And so we're trying to eliminate all those sources of clean water that are entering the system, whether it's from manhole covers, cross connects of foundation drains, roof drains, cracks in the pipes, leaky joints. I mean, all of that is a contributor. We can really tell where those are at, both from flow monitoring. After rain events, you'll see a large spike in the amount of water going through the flow meters, or smoke testing, where they'll put basically a smoke bomb in the pipe with high pressure blowers that blow the smoke out. And you'll see through the cracks or the cross connects, you'll see smoke coming out of someone's stack on their house. And that's an indication that there's a cross connect. And so it's a way for us to eliminate the cross connections, find the spots where the pipe is in the worst condition and it's letting a lot of I&I in, finding the high groundwater areas. And so it's really a culmination of both residential and commercial uses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I think this is a fantastic thing, Paul. It has been a problem since I've been on the council that we've been working on off and on. And we certainly don't want to be sending stormwater through our treatment plant. And the fact that BPU is willing to pay for half of it is just excellent. I would imagine we might get taken to the woodshed by our partners in the other half of the council on why we didn't budget for this. But that still doesn't mean it's not a valuable project. And we'll try and budget for these things, hopefully, in the future. Hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the $39,180 proposal?
Erickson makes a motion to approve the way.
Second, Jan?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Engineer, will you call the roll?
Bevins?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Lambert?
Yes.
That motion is approved. Anything else we're missing? Hearing none, thank you callers for calling in, and we will see you at 7:30 on the main council agenda. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you.